Okay, now what is incrementality testing? Same level, okay? We're not trying to go deep here. The setup for, we have 2-3 hour sessions specifically meant for incrementality testing. There are different types of tests, okay? But what is a good way to conceptualize what an incrementality test is? Well, here is kind of a one slide answer for that, okay? Now, imagine this is your Facebook program. You're reaching a bunch of audiences on Facebook, and this is the reach of that audience. R represents the reach of the audience. Right now, if you go pull reporting from Facebook, they'll report a bunch of conversions, last touch conversions. That is what I'm calling C, okay? Now, the conversion rate for the campaign is C overall, number of conversions divided by reach. Important note here is R, reach, not impressions I, right? So it's kind of an important to note that when you're calculating conversion rates, frequency is a big area of a confounding factor that you will end up with, especially when you're calculating RCT conversion rate. So if you're doing this on yourself, imagine that the denominator is the reach of the campaign, not the impressions of the clicks, which is not easy to get, by the way, right? So we'll talk about techniques to like get to that. But if you're doing this yourself, it's an important thing. Okay, then in the context of the test, what you want to do is you want to basically sample an audience which is identical to this audience you're reaching, okay? And then give them a control treatment, okay? And we'll talk about this control treatments are, but there's variety of control treatments. It used to be PSA ads. You can actually serve a public service announcement like a Smokey the Bear ad or some sort of like a charity ad or whatnot. It's kind of gone away from the space, but just for the sake of like classroom illustration, imagine that's a control treatment. Now that control treatment will also pick up conversions, okay? It just so happens that you'll see that control treatment will also pick up last click conversions, okay? Now, the control conversion rates is C hat over R hat. So this conversion rate tells you what is the baseline propensity of that audience to convert. If you didn't do anything, if you leave them alone, how often will they convert? What is the propensity of conversions from the audience? That's what this will measure. So now once you have this, what you can do is you can calculate what's called baseline conversions, which is in this last click conversions, how many of those conversions would happen anyway? This is what we call baseline conversions. So baseline conversions is the reach. I'm trying to work my. Okay, reach. It's actually not R hat. It should say R. It's not R hat. Sorry, it's actually R. Baseline conversions is the reach of the audience times the control conversion rate, which gives you the light green segment. The light green minus the overall circle is the incremental conversion. Incremental conversion equals C minus baseline conversion. So I'm going to remove the R hat to R here. Typo on my side, okay? So now why am I walking you through this? This is the classic RCT formula. If you're doing randomized control testing, the formula is you take an audience. Let's say if you were given a vaccine, the way they would do it is exactly this. You would basically split the audience into two identical audiences, A and a B. A will get the vaccine, B will get the placebo. We'll look at the response rates or the whatever outcomes we care about of both those. And the difference in response rates is basically lift or incrementality, okay? Now, in social studies, like what we're doing for campaign conversions and whatnot, we're looking for a lift of anywhere from 2%, 5%, 10%, 20% type of thing. Whereas when you're doing vaccines, you're looking for a 98%. Like you want to make most of the people are getting better outcomes than the people who got the sugar pill, right? So it's a different kind of a strength of outcomes you're looking at. But fundamental idea is the same, which is to split audiences into identical components, give one audience a regular treatment, one audience a control treatment, look at the response rates, diff the response rates. The diff is basically what is left, okay, or incrementality. All right. So there is in incrementality testing, this approach is called design of experiments. In statistics, it's called design of experiments. It's a controlled experiment. You're controlling what treatment you're giving to the test audience, controlling what treatment you're giving to the control audience. It's a designed experiment, called a design of experiments. There's also less pure approaches in market. There's something called quasi-experimentation designs, okay, where you synthesize a control audience, okay? A good example of quasi-experimentation approaches is somewhat, I don't know how many of you guys are aware of the GO-STAGE methodology, which is not quasi, but you can think of the synthetic control approaches as quasi-experimental methodologies, where you synthesize a control audience. Now, good and bad about it. The good about it is that you don't actually have to run a test. You actually can just run your campaign and the platform will synthesize a control audience for you. And the synthesized control audience represents this control audience, and you can see what the outcomes of the synthesized audience is. That becomes the baseline. Now you can use the baseline conversion rate to understand the incremental conversions of the regular campaign. Okay. Now we can come out of the box. Now I think I don't know this for a fact, but a lot of the Roku, Hulu kind of lift testing approaches are based on this quasi approaches. Okay, where they synthesize the control audience. The folks like Facebook and Snap use something called ghost ads methodology, which they can claim is actually a perfectly designed test, but it's kind of opaque to us. We don't get to see what they're doing, but they're also synthesizing a control audience, but using a more true design of experiments approach to doing that. Okay, and then there's something called observational designs. Observational designs are, you don't do a test, you just observe what's happening in the market. You see where you got exposures, where you didn't see exposures. You treat the place where you didn't get exposures as a control. And now you kind of measure the difference in conversion rates. Now, a lot of the MTA algorithms are like observational designs, okay? Which is why it's very correlational. There's something called the Shapley algorithm, which was a very popular MTA algorithm for data-driven multi-touch attribution, which was basically simulating like this test approach by looking at paths that had Google, did not have a Google, and then treat the non-Google as control, Google as test, and then look at the difference in coefficients for those. So that's what's called an observational design, where you just look at the evidence you have and see if you can just treat this as a test and figure out these coefficients from that. Okay. Now, the highest level quality of test is the designed experiment. The DOV, design of experiment, is the highest quality. The observational designs is the least quality in terms of the integrity of the result. So when you're observing a lot of this in market, you're kind of asking the question, what kind of a test is this? Is it an observed test or is it a design test, right? If it's a design test, you have a lot of confidence in it. If it's an observed test, you have not as much confidence in it, right? If you're doing a synthetic controls, you're somewhere in the middle. You're like, okay, I understand it's fast, it's cheap, it's easy, but it's not a design test. So you have to be, you can always synthesize a control audience to have a low baseline conversion rate, right? You can always sample an audience inside Hulu, Roku, Facebook to look at audiences that have low conversion rates, baseline conversion rates, and now the media looks really strong, right? So you can kind of like game the system in many ways, like doing that. And I had the unfortunate experience of having to go through a lot of that. So when you're looking at that, you're kind of asking the question, what kind of a test is it? That's the point of this slide.